Okay, everybody. Thank you for braving the monsoon of 2019. Thrilled to have you here. This is our first meetup of 2019, and got a good crew, and we got a stacked lineup. So I think we're all going to learn something. And these guys have been hanging out with us all week here, working, and they've been above my head all week. So hopefully they bring us all along. I'll start off with a quick thank you to the sponsors of the Nashville Blockchain Meetup. We have Hashed Health, we have Frost Brown Todd, we have BTC Media, we have LBMC, and we have our venue and beer host, WeWork. So thank you guys for supporting this, and thank you all for coming. As these slides scroll through, I think take note of that. Save the date, September 9th and 10th, 2019, Distributed Health. Make sure you're in town. And on one of the slides rolling through is a really cool thing that was released last week at HIMSS conference. It's a book about blockchain and healthcare. John Bass was one of the authors, and a number of people in this room, including Kevin Clausen and Beth Breeden and Emily Bailey, were contributors to the book. So Nashville's well represented, and it's I don't think there's a better source for what's going on in healthcare at blockchain than that book. It looks and reads like a textbook. So links on our website, on the Hashed Health site. So I'm going to call Paul Shapiro out, and he's going to sort of lead you through all the Monero participants tonight, and we're in for a treat.
So yeah, my name is Paul Shapiro. I'm the CEO of Manero, which is a wallet for the Monero digital currency. We have with us tonight Saray Noether, that's his pseudonym. He's a researcher at the Monero Research Lab. We've got Sarang Noether, alternatively pronounced Sarang. I like Sarang. Also a researcher. And then we've got Naveen Jain, who's with Tari. And we'll all just be doing some short talks and introducing Monero and why it's really, really cool, and some different trade-offs of different technologies that are out there in the space today. So let me see here. What's going to be the best way for me to do this? I might actually just sit down. Oh, there we go. Although we're going to need a USB-C to USB.
Okay. Probably best off sitting.
Yep, no big deal. All right. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the lead developer at Monero as well. I'm the product manager, lead designer, and I'm also a Monero contributor. So I do some C++. I try to help out with usability of the actual code base, try to kind of like wrangle the community and give them what I think might be somewhat sensible feedback. But I'm relatively new to the space as well. I got involved with Monero back in 2016, late 2016. So I have a lot to learn, definitely, and hopefully my perspective you guys can relate to my perspective a bit. You can find me on Twitter at tweetingpauls, tweetingpaulS, and we have a bunch of open source projects for Monero. So if there are any developers here that want to contribute, that could be a really great opportunity. We also chat on IRC. So first of all, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Giles and Hashed Health. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak here. It's amazing to have this platform. We'd love to share Monero with everyone. And so first of all, thank you very much to Hashed Health. And also, obviously, thank you so much to WeWork for hosting us. This is an incredible space. We love the free beer. It's extremely tasty. And just Nashville as well. Nashville is awesome. It's just an incredible city. Everyone is so welcoming, so kind, and yeah, I love how everyone just works together in Nashville. It's a really, really touching experience for me. So show of hands really quickly. Who's a developer here? So, wow, there are like 4 developers in here. Yes. So how about any Bitcoin holders or traders? Many, many more of you, which is not terribly surprising, but in any case. Smart contract developers, I'm going to guess maybe like 1 or half or 0. Okay, 2, actually, maybe. So anyone with cryptography experience? Researcher? Okay, so open source project experience? Nice. Very cool. What do you guys do, by the way? What sort of open source projects? Like if you want to just call it out. IBM blockchain stuff? Cool. All right. Nice. Okay, so meet Monero. Monero is like Bitcoin, but it's actually private. It's actually fungible, or fungibility is on a spectrum, or it's a. Some people say it's on a sliding scale, but Monero is designed to be used as an actual currency. And so, what do I mean when I say it's actually private? Well, with Bitcoin, it's kind of interesting. If one of you gives me your public address, your public Bitcoin address, I can tell how much money you have in your wallet, where you've been getting your transactions from, and where you're sending them to, which is kind of scary when you think about it. So Sarang gave me a really interesting analogy earlier today. He said, Bitcoin is like going into the city square and yelling as hard as you can who you're transacting with, who you are, and what the amount of your transaction is. Because it's literally an internationally available ledger. Everyone can look at it. So Monero was basically a fair release of a new protocol that was introduced by a completely separate anonymous author, Nicholas von Saberhagen, back in 2014. So that protocol was called Cryptonote. So the Bitcoin code base is often forked, but Monero is not a fork of Bitcoin. It's a reimplementation, or it's a new implementation, and it's a fair release. One thing that's important to note that a lot of people miss is that Monero is no longer really a CryptoNote currency. It's diverged so much because it's iterated upon so frequently. So Monero is a free and open source project, and that's one of the reasons why it gets iterated upon so quickly. There's no corporation behind it. So a lot of the time in a lot of these currencies that are out these days, you see that there's some sort of conflict of interest going on where something that might not be in the best interest of the like the optics for the corporation behind it doesn't get announced until a very long time passes. So there's no trusted setup. There's no central authority that's saying like who's calling the shots. There's no developer or founder incentive. There's no like dev tax or anything like that that just gets automatically sent to some people. There's no ICO. ICO is like initial coin offering. It's basically a way to print free money that the SEC is cracking down on. Just in short introduction. So it operates by this really interesting model of governance known partially as loose consensus, which basically says that there's a core team who are the stewards of the project. They're sort of watching out for it. And they listen really carefully to what the community says, especially what the developers say and what the researchers say. And they do call the shots, so to speak, in case there's something that the community needs extra guidance on. But they listen to the community and they basically just do whatever the community wants. And then Monero, as a free and open source project, largely adopts this thing called the C4, the Collective Code Construction Contract, which it has a number of provisions in it that says, in case there's like a person who's causing all kinds of problems, it says like, well, the community might be able to ban you, like if you're a completely bad actor, which I don't think has ever actually happened. But there's another interesting provision in there as well, which says that virtually any code that anyone contributes to the Monero project is going to get merged. As long as it doesn't break anything, as long as it's not overtly malicious, it's going to get merged. And so as a result, the Monero project iterates like crazy. There are so many pull requests that get submitted and merged. And yeah, so really quickly, why is privacy important? Well, people don't largely realize this, and I think it's we have a lot of protections about this right now, but there hasn't been a hugely catastrophic thing that has made people sort of wake up and realize how important privacy is, although there are a lot of breaches that are occurring these days. But especially as pertaining to a cryptocurrency or as a monetary supplier or a system of money, privacy is extremely important. And just going back to the Bitcoin thing really quickly, if I know how much money, or if, let's say, a criminal knows how much money someone has in your Bitcoin wallet, and you're out traveling, and they know that you have a Bitcoin key, private key, They can just like kidnap you and coerce you into giving them your private key, and bang, all your money's gone. So that's a problem. Yes, it is a feature of cryptocurrencies that you are the key custodian, but it's just another argument for why cryptocurrencies really need privacy as part of their feature set. And if you think about it, in terms of, in order for a system of money to be adopted widely and used as an international currency, it's going to have to be viable for corporations. And so if you think about it, like what large corporation would really be comfortable transacting in a system of money that's not private? You know, if you could see like this corporation is transacting this many millions of dollars at these times of day with these people, you know, that's kind of a problem for the corporation. And if you take that even further, it's a problem for governments that would want to use this system of money as well. It just doesn't make any sense. So privacy is also key for a lot of systems that would want to be built on top of a settlement layer like this, like a permissionless, trustless, anti-censorship settlement layer. One really obvious example is if you want to build an anti-censorship chat program that sits on top of blockchain cryptocurrency type technology, if people can see the content of those messages and they can see who is sending them, even if the content of the messages is encrypted, if you can see who is sending them from what addresses, you can do timing analysis, and it's really not very good. It makes it completely unviable for certain applications. And we're gonna, the researchers are gonna go into, the researchers, the two Noethers are gonna go into more detail about this, about why it's such a big deal. And there's a problem with this as well. So, you know, not to single Bitcoin out or not to single Ethereum out, although I wouldn't really have a terrible problem singling Ethereum out, but I like doing that. But a lot of research shows that it's virtually impossible to bolt privacy onto a settlement layer after it's been released and put out in the wild. And so privacy has to be mandatory. And it's not so it has to be mandatory, and it's also not something that you can add to the technology afterwards. So the other thing is, this is also extremely important for a currency. In Bitcoin, if you can tell where a certain Bitcoin came from, and you can see that, well, it came from this fraudulent activity, like these criminals sent this Bitcoin to this person, and you know, whoever it is, now whoever legitimately owns the Bitcoin needs to use it. If they try to give that Bitcoin that they legitimately own, the tainted Bitcoin, to an exchange, the exchange might say, I don't want to touch that. They might say, well, we're just not going to allow you to trade that. And the supply of Bitcoin is fixed. And so if Bitcoin continually get blacklisted over time, the supply might actually dwindle to zero. And this property of a money or of a currency where you can exchange any one note or any one coin for any other coin is known as fungibility. So there's this fascinating relationship between privacy and fungibility, where if you don't have privacy, you also don't get fungibility. So Bitcoin was this major innovation in like distributed consensus and trustlessness and anti-censorship, but privacy is a huge part of that conversation, and it's not something that we see being talked about enough. So Monero is constantly improved. There have already been huge innovations beyond Bitcoin. Like there are tons of privacy improvements that I'll go into in a second. It's ASIC resistant, which means that the mining of it doesn't end up getting centralized nearly as badly as, say, Bitcoin, or something which is susceptible to ASIC mining. It's got a flexible block size, and so if traffic increases very quickly and the blocks start to get full of transactions, then it can actually flex, and it's built into the fee model that that this can happen. It's also got regular hard forks built into the expectation of everyone who's contributing to it and who's using it. And a hard fork is effectively a security upgrade for the platform where the Manero contributors and the Manero core team can say, hey guys, we have these security improvements or these privacy improvements that we recommend everyone use, and it's just, you know, obviously a smart idea to do this. And so we're going to say at this block height, the behavior of everyone's Monero node is going to change to these other behaviors, and a lot of them become these consensus rules. And that can be very important because in a lot of these cryptocurrency projects, we see a lot of people with entrenched interests who absolutely refuse to change certain properties of their currency where those properties are really important for the longevity of the project to be changed. So there's also like it's also inflationary, which is related to the flexible block size. So the 5 pillars of privacy, as I mentioned before with Bitcoin, where the amount is coming from, what the amount is, who it's going to, the originating IP of the transaction broadcaster who initially submitted it to the network is usually a really good indicator of who it originated from. That's something that we're working on obfuscating with the usage of networks like Tor and I2P. And then mandatory privacy is really, really important. And you see a lot of projects that are trying to like, sort of optionally enable a transaction construction system that uses, or that's private, it uses like some private transaction construction system, but it's not mandatory. And as will be gone into later, that leads to a lot of complexity and a lot of susceptibility to forensic analysis. So Monero is basically the only project that I know of that is whole hog private, private, which basically means, it's mandatory. So a couple things we're currently iterating on. Ring signatures, that's a cryptographic technique that can obfuscate who is actually sending, or who the real coin is coming from. We'd like to replace that completely, but it's a really hard problem. KYC AML metadata, so like know your customer, anti-money laundering laws on exchanges. Exchanges can associate the person's real identity with the blockchain data. And if let's say there's an exchange that knows everybody, then suddenly they can de-anonymize the entire blockchain, or at least they can get relatively close to that. And then fingerprinting of transactions. There's the potential for certain wallet clients to construct their transactions in ways that make those transactions stand out from the rest of the set of transactions. And so you can kind of like partition the set of transactions and say, well, whoever did that is using that wallet. And so, you can kind of like build up a profile. So in practice, as I mentioned, Monero moves super quickly. It's got over 500 contributors worldwide, which makes it one of the biggest open source projects in the entire world. And yet it's so young. So there's clearly something going on with this project. It's got a really fascinating funding system. Anyone can show up, make a proposal that says, I want to do this for the project. And as long as they demonstrate that they know what they're doing by writing a proposal in this public manner, the community will come in and fund them. And we've seen that time and time again. So it's a viable funding system that doesn't rely on some central company saying, well, we're going to allocate money to you guys. And yes, there are some trade-offs in getting paid in Monero at a certain schedule, but those are things that we're able to iterate on because it's a free and open source project. It's like very community owned. There are also work groups. Anyone can show up and start a work group to do certain things. Like if I want to do research on data science behind Monero, or if I want to do marketing for Monero, or I want to improve the design of the graphical user interface behind Monero, I can just show up, start a work group, get other people on board, start an IRC room, and off we go. And then Monero Research Lab is very active. There are, I think, 200 people in the IRC room, which is actually pretty huge. And they do constant academic grade, like very high quality research on the math and the cryptography and the game theory and the economics and the technical soundness of Monero. Monero is already being used by people all over. It's an actual currency that people are using all the time. ProjectCoralReef.com is, I'll show you a screenshot of it in a second, but it's a place where merchants have agreed to offer merchandise exclusively for Monero. Globy.com is a payment processor that helps people accept Monero. You can use Shopify to integrate Monero directly into your site, and you can take payment really easily and settle it into different currency of your choice if you'd like to. And then you hear a lot of association with these privacy coins, privacy currencies, with like darknet markets and drugs and money laundering and stuff like that. But a lot of people have very legitimate reasons for not wanting their identities revealed. And they also just like the fact that they're in control of their money, or that they're like financially sovereign, so to speak. And so you have a lot of light web shops. Instead of dark web, you have light web shops where people are just accepting Monero because they believe in it. So this is Project Coral Reef. This is just a selection of the artists who have signed on to make their merchandise available. And you can go and pay in Monero. It's awesome. You get a discount for it in certain cases. And then I just want to mention, this is actually from yesterday, I believe, in that room right over there. That's Saray right there. And we hold these Monero Research Lab workshops here in Nashville. And they've just been fantastic. You can see the scribblings on the whiteboards there. It's these researchers who are just meeting in person because they believe in the project and because they're funded by their forum funding system proposals. And they work on really interesting problems behind Monero. And so again, thank you to WeWork for hosting us, and thanks to Hash Health for getting us in here and letting us use this space. Okay, so I can finally get into Monero. So Monero is a web wallet that was founded in 2014 by the Monero project lead maintainer, his real name is Ricardo Spagni. His internet name is Fluffy Pony, which I think is fantastic. And the purpose of Monero is to improve the usability of Monero for because initially, because they were focusing on the technology behind Monero, you effectively had to be like a elite hacker to use the command line interface. And so Ricardo saw this opportunity to improve the usability of Monero. So he launched Monero back then. It's a web wallet, which means that you can access it through a website. But unlike exchanges, it's not custodial of the keys that you need to spend the money. And so it doesn't sacrifice effectively the main benefit of using cryptocurrencies, which is that you are in control. You're your own bank. And another interesting point, of course, even if we got hacked, there's no way that the attacker could spend your money. The worst that could happen is that they could see the set of transactions that are flowing through the wallets. Monero is deeply involved with Monero project open source contributions. I'll mention a few of them a little bit later. We are involved in the developer meetings that happen every second Sunday. There are just a lot of really talented C++ developers that we've worked with so far. We sponsor some of the Monero infrastructure. We sponsor some of the forum funding system proposals. And we also, as I mentioned, we co-host with Tari Labs, and Navina's from Tari Labs, the quarterly Monero Research Lab workshops here in Nashville. So we launched the web wallet in 2014. We noticed that, as I'm sure a lot of people know, the web is actually surprisingly insecure. It's not just the web technologies, like HTTPS, which is encryption for the web, has patched a lot of holes, and it's become very standard these days. But because of the fact that anyone with access to your private key can spend your money, this is a huge source of attacks. A lot of people like to try to attack Monero. One of the ways they do that is by registering these phishing domains, where it's like Monero, but then one of the characters has a dot above it. It's like a special Unicode character. And they inevitably get people to click on that through Google Ads, like people Google Monero accidentally or something, and they click the top site. And people end up getting their money stolen like that in a lot of cases. It's a phishing attack. So in 2016, we redesigned everything. We launched downloadable applications for desktop and mobile. And it not only increases the security, because now you have everything encrypted on your computer and it's downloaded and it never touches a web browser, but we also took the opportunity to add tons and tons of features. We had to, because of the fact that transactions are constructed within the browser or within the application so that the key doesn't ever actually have to hit the server, we ended up re-implementing a lot of the cryptography behind Monero as part of the application. And we, in 2016, made that available as a library that other wallets can consume. So a number of companies are already using this library. One example is Edge Wallet. They use our hosting, and they also integrate our library. And then I think it just took them a couple weeks to add Monero directly into their application. Normally, it's significantly harder to add Monero support. And then a really interesting opportunity came up with the introduction of Webassembly, which is a technology that allows the compilation of C++, in which Monero is written, into a low-level language that can be run inside of browsers. And so what we've been doing lately is, I think we actually did this back in, it was in 2018, in the summer of 2018. We took a bunch of the Monero code and we effectively just replaced our reimplementation in JavaScript by using the C++ directly. And so that's what Monero core.js is now. It's this like thin wrapper around this transpiled C++. So that's enabled us to keep up with the extremely fast pace of Monero development without having to devote all these resources to re-implementing everything in JavaScript. So this is what the original web wallet looks like, or looked like. You know, it's actually not that bad. Oh, now you have my private key, but whatever. So I'm just kidding. There's actually nothing in there. But this is the new desktop application. It allows you to have multiple wallets. It's password protected. Everything's encrypted. A lot of really interesting opportunities to iterate on the UI and to experiment with very cryptocurrency specific UI challenges. It also obviously allows us to educate people a lot better. You can have contacts that are saved locally. This is really cool. Well, that's a contact being used. That's a request over there. So you can send a QR code to someone and they can drop it in their application, or they can click on the Monero link and it'll open the application. So these are some of the usability improvements that Monero has brought to the Monero ecosystem. I think probably the biggest one is the creation of something called the Light Wallet server, which is, so in Bitcoin, you have something called an SPV wallet where you can verify transactions in a very, very lightweight manner without having to download the blockchain. And so they use that to create something called a light wallet. But you can't do that in Monero. It's structured completely differently. You need to scan the entire blockchain in order to tell which sections of the blockchain are yours. And so Ricardo, back in the day, back in 2014, created this thing called the Light Wallet server, where the user's view key gets disclosed to the server. So in Monero, there's a view key and the spend key. The view key gets disclosed to the server, and it scans for you in the background. So whatever device you log in on, all your transactions are instantly there. So you don't have to wait for however many days for your wallet to catch up when you log in on your mobile device, which doesn't make any sense for mobile devices. The onboarding is significantly better. It's normally extremely difficult for people to get into Monero. You can use multiple wallets now instead of just having one wallet that you log into in your web wallet. You can export your transaction history in a CSV for your accountant. You can open URLs. You can send requests around. Open alias is a really interesting technology that Ricardo also invented. It uses DNS to register these long cryptocurrency addresses at a domain or at an email address. So Monero has support for that natively. You type in an email address that supports open alias, and it'll just look up the cryptocurrency address for it. A lot of in-app education, which is really necessary because there are just tons and tons of terms that people aren't familiar with. A lot of options that are preferentially exposed in settings. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities to innovate on the user experience and the design of these things. There's a desktop application that I showed you guys. It's built in JavaScript. It uses Electron. It doesn't use a framework like React or Angular. It's actually very low level, but there's a view library that I built, which effectively mimics how iOS applications are built, which I think is how it really should be done. It's an extremely powerful technique, and so I re-implemented that in JavaScript, and that's how a lot of the components are built. But it's document object model underneath the hood. So it's open source. JS contributors are very welcome. So if anyone would like an opportunity to work on something really fun, we welcome you guys. It's a highly reusable code base too. So there are a lot of modules there that you can use in other applications as well because it's open source. This is the iOS application. Slight design tweaks, making things a little bit clearer. It's still multiple wallets. You can still have contacts, and it's got all the functionality. But it's written natively in Swift, so the UI is like super responsive and super fluid. It's also open source. We welcome contributors. I think you'll enjoy working on the code base. It's extremely clean. Swift and iOS is really my specialty. I've been doing that for about 10 years or 12 years or something crazy like that. So it's the code base is really clean. So this is interesting. Right now I found myself re-implementing the application repeatedly for all these different platforms. primarily because I didn't want to sacrifice on user experience and also sacrifice the security of the application by using something like React Native. And I could drone on for hours about why I don't think it's the right choice anyway, but what I found is that it's a good idea to have a shared C++ application library that implements effectively all of the business logic. And then the cool thing about it is that we can use that same WebAssembly technology to transpile that into something that can be run in a browser. So it's the same code base across iOS, Android, Electron, and the web browser. It's also got a thorough test suite, which is really nice. It uses Boost. Oh, and obviously the great thing about this is that it also, another great thing is that it integrates directly into the Monero code. Android is in progress. It's the UI is built in Kotlin, and then it's just integrating directly into the shared application library that I just mentioned. It's also open source, and we'll probably have that out during the summer. So I mentioned that we do a lot of open source contribution, and one of the things that we did is we rebuilt our own server in C++, and we open sourced it for the community. So it's actually currently sitting in a pull request on the Monero repository, which means anyone can run their own server. So even the drawback of having to submit your view key to the server is now eliminated because you can submit, you can set your own server and preferences. Extremely high quality C++ code. It's written by a really, really smart guy who's not only really good at C++, but he's a cryptocurrency veteran. He's one of the best people in cryptocurrency, or he's one of the most knowledgeable and experienced people in how cryptocurrencies work and in the computer science behind them that's in Monero right now. So anyone who wants to review it, we would appreciate it. Anyone who wants to contribute to it, I think you'll find it a joy to contribute to because it's really, really good code. Open Monero is another alternative implementation of the server that has existed for a while. And so you can already run your own server if you want to using this other project called Open Monero. And we worked with them to establish a community-wide public specification for the API format. So people can come in, suggest improvements. The community will debate, what the best way to do this is, and that's how we're establishing consensus on how to move forward with this technology that we'd like to contribute to the ecosystem. As I mentioned, Monero is open source. We have a ton of open source repositories, generally really good code, should be fun to contribute to. So if you want to work on something to build your portfolio, I know there aren't too many developers here, so I won't go on too much about this, but there are a lot of opportunities to work on open source, not just in Monero, but also in Monero. I want to mention as well that this is kind of like the Wild West frontier type situation. So you'll be learning a ton. I know I did. And there are mentors, there are plenty of people to guide you, and we're happy to do so. And your contributions would be very welcomed by a lot of people. So what's coming up for Monero? We are hard at work on enabling cross-currency exchange in the application. So you'll be able to send to a Bitcoin address if you want to pay for something in Bitcoin, or be able to top up your Monero, like use Monero as your store of value, but transfer in Bitcoin. We'll have things like always on background scanning, so you don't have to, so the server doesn't deprioritize your scanning in the background. Obviously, we're doing Android. We're planning on doing a native desktop application instead of Electron, probably at the end of this year. We'll integrate privacy networks like Tor and I2P. So cross-device metadata synchronization is really interesting. It's the fact that right now, if you have contacts in your application, if you move to a different device, those contacts are only stored on the device that you added them on. So we have this proposal protocol for a way that the metadata can be synced through the server in such a way as to prevent the server from being able to decrypt it. That's actually a really exciting thing that I'm looking forward to. We're looking into Ledger hardware wallet integration. The vast majority of the work is actually done on that already, and it's just glue code effectively that needs to be done. And then I have this massive list of features that I've been waiting to implement, and I just haven't had any bandwidth to do it. And then, tons of other really cool things like a light theme, because you guys saw the application was like really dark colored and looks cool, but light theme is nice too. And then, so I've been thinking about a lot of usability things related to Monero over the last couple years. One of them is, wouldn't it be awesome if you could just give someone a note instead of having to have an address from them? That's actually a really tough problem. Improvements to web security, other ways of transacting with people, or other ways of giving requests to people, other ways of reducing trust in the Monero server. So in review, Monero is a very sincere shot at the real ideals behind cryptocurrency. I'm really excited about it. It's the project I've chosen to work on, and I couldn't really see myself working on any other project aside from Monero. Monero brings a lot of really big usability improvements to Monero. There are lots of exciting things for Monero coming in the future. Android is one of them. We're working on a lot of monetization and team growth this year. So 2019, 2020 will be really exciting for Monero. And then we'll continue these quarterly research workshops with the Monero Research Lab. So thank you. Thanks for having me.